All right, we're here. We got some new information on the Denver shooting the other day. Matthew Doloff, he was the hired security guard apparently from Pinkerton, while new information claims that Pinkerton had contracted him. He is not licensed to carry a weapon as a security guard. So the fact that he had one is very suspicious. Neither Pinkerton nor 9 News vetted this guy in the slightest. He's got a lot of left-leaning rants and just stuff he posts on Facebook and Twitter. He's apparently, a big Bernie Sanders supporter. So we know how one Bernie Sanders supporter already had attacked, a group of Republicans, but not necessarily saying this is politically motivated, but I'm sure this guy was. It's safe to almost assume at this point that this guy was pretty much just in the echo chamber of the left, just getting nonstop berated by them and their media. So I'm sure when he saw a Trump supporter coming at him, he didn't no matter what, and he acted irrationally. He acted very, very irrationally, to say the least. Says the station reported that it later found out that it appears that Doloff was not actually employed by the company it used, and the company did not provide additional information about his actual employer. So yeah, we don't know who he's actually employed to at this point. Yeah, Pinkerton contracted him to be contracted for 9 News, so this is just, it's becoming a mess, and the more news that comes out, it's starting to look it starts to look a bit suspicious. Not necessarily saying this guy was going out there that he was going to attack somebody, but I think that the media kind of played a big hand into this, to stoking fear into this guy. We got from Breitbart news outlet amidst Denver protest shooter was their security guard. This is just from yesterday, some of the information we had covered. I don't know why I thought I got rid of that one. The left has gotten out of hand. Mom of Navy vet 49 shot dead in front of his son during Denver Patriot muster rally blast. Unlicensed Pinkerton security guard killer. Lee Keltner, 49, was shot dead by Matthew Doloff, 30, during a Patriot muster rally in Denver on Saturday. I gotta say, Daily Mailman, your titles are just way too long. They're insane. The mother of Navy veteran who was gunned down at a Patriot muster rally hit out at her son's killer in an emotional Facebook post saying, "The left has gone too far." We read that. The victim's mother, Carol Keltner, expressed her anger and heartbreak on Facebook, claiming that her son was murdered because he supported the police. "My son Lee was at the Patriot rally today in Denver," Carol wrote in the Northeast Arkansas Tea Party group. After the rally, a person on the BLM and Antifa side went up to him, said a few nasty words, then shot him in the head. He was murdered because he backed the police. His 24-year-old son was with him. "I moved to Arkansas because Colorado is too expensive and liberal. The left has gotten out of hand." Doloff, a registered Democrat, is currently jailed without bond on suspicion of first-degree murder. On Sunday, it was revealed that Doloff was not licensed to work as a security guard in Denver, according to the city's Department of Excise and Licenses. 9 News said it had hired Doloff through the Pinkerton Detective Agency to serve as security on Saturday outside the Denver Civic Center, where pro-police Patriot muster supporters faced off with Black Lives Matter and Antifa counter-protesters. After it was revealed that Doloff was unlicensed, Pinkerton said that it did not directly employ him and had contracted him from another company, which it declined to name. I guess maybe to the media they're not going to say the name, but hopefully apparently Pinkerton is cooperating with the, local police and everything, and I'm sure they'll end up getting the name of the company. It'll end up getting, leaked out or whatever. So we'll end up getting it in the next day or two, I'm sure. The Denver Police Department had said Doloff has no known affiliation with Black Lives Matter, an Antifa group that staged a BLM Antifa soup drive counter-protest against the Patriot muster rally. Apparently he was, really involved in Occupy Wall Street and all that. So here I've got an article from The Intercept, and I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs from this one because this writer's pretty disturbing to have kind of framed it the way he did, and you'll see in just like the first few paragraphs, because it's like disturbing how he's almost trying to, like, victim blame the guy. It says, far-right Twitter trolls won't admit they were wrong about killing of a patriot in Denver. A right-wing demonstrator was killed after assaulting a man who was a reporter's bodyguard, not an anti-fascist activist. Yeah, but we also know that he was a leftist Bernie supporter. He was unlicensed, and he actually wasn't directly employed with Pinkerton, so he was a contract. He was being contracted through another contract. Here's what happened. In Denver on Saturday, Lee Keltner, a right-wing demonstrator, was shot and killed after he assaulted Matthew Doloff, a reporter's bodyguard, who retaliated for a blow to the head and a spray of mace by firing a single gunshot from the point-blank range. One thing they neglect to mention is that Matthew Doloff also swung to try to hit the bear mace away from the victim. The skirmish with which I'm gonna restart that. The skirmish with which escalated to deadly violence in less than 10 seconds, unfolded in broad daylight directly in front of witnesses outside the Denver Art Museum. One was a conservative demonstrator who caught the sound of the gunshot and the sight of the victim collapsing to the ground in a distressing video. A second was a live streamer who rushed to the scene with the police capturing the gunman's arrest. A third was a staff photographer at the Denver Post, whose startling close-up images of the whole incident were online by the end of the day. But far-right Twitter personalities who thrive by providing their followers with fresh reasons to be outraged around the clock do not wait all day to leap to conclusions about unfolding events. Within minutes of the shooting, which took place after a sparsely attended rally described as a patriot muster, weren't there like a couple thousand people, or at least like 300 or 400? I can't remember exactly how many were at the patriot muster. If someone wants to refresh in the comments on that, but there seemed to be a decent amount of people there. I wouldn't say sparsely attended a rally. Described as a patriot muster against BLM, Antifa, and related Marxist organizations by the organizer, a former military contractor who survived the Benghazi attack, influential conservatives with hundreds of thousands of followers began to speculate that the gunman must have been an anti-fascist activist. Just over an hour later, those same trolls flooded social networks with misinformation, amplifying a mistaken report from the Denver Post that the gunman was a left-wing demonstrator. That report, which was corrected later in the day, was apparently based on the account of Helen Richardson, the newspaper photographer who watched the shooting unfold through her viewfinder and had no idea that Doloff was, in fact, a bodyguard for the reporter standing behind him. Yeah, but why are you blaming then, like, trolls and right-wing people when it was literally the media that said it? It was an article that said he was a left-wing demonstrator based on what she said. And they didn't, make sure they had all the information, and they had to retract that story. You're not, like, this is why it gets hard when you only read, like, one source. Like, imagine if someone only read The Intercept and got this kind of information. It would be, the person would probably end up being hateful. This guy just goes on and just tries to blame all these other, like, right-wing personalities and journalists to just crap on it. It's insane. It's just a horrible, horrible article. But then remember, we have the former ESPN host Keith Olbermann. He lashed out at Trump supporters Friday night, calling for the prosecution and conviction of all those connected with the president. Said Mr. Olbermann had called Trump supporters maggots, the new insult du jour to replacing 2016's deplorables in the 2020 presidential election. So yeah, he called them maggots. He was like, we need to extinguish them. Get rid of all of them, and then we can cleanse our society again. It's like, whoa, bro, you are going nuts. And if people like Matthew Doloff are getting what you're saying all the time like that, then it's almost no wonder that they get so antsy and then they just shoot a guy in the face for, I don't know, bear mace at the most, which shouldn't be a killable offense. I'm just saying, he shouldn't have done that. The gunman was acting very, very irrational. All right, we'll continue on to the miscellaneous rallies now. We've got a bunch of stuff that happened last night. We got, put these Biden fools in jail now. Furious Trump demands FBI find those responsible for pulling down statues of Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt in Portland. The two statues were torn down in the space of 10 minutes in Portland last night. Trump raged at the animals responsible and urged Portland to send for the feds. Protesters condemned Lincoln for his execution of 38 native warriors in 1862. Roosevelt's plinth was defaced with a message blaming him for stolen land. Well, one thing they're forgetting to mention in this part is that he also pardoned, I believe, or he let off, 265 of them as well. So it's like, oh, we started executing. It's like, probably shouldn't. All these can go. It's like, we don't know the full history. I mean, I'm not a historian, so I don't know exactly the situation there with Abe Lincoln, but I guarantee you they don't either. Donald Trump today raged at the animals who tore down statues of Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt in Portland last night as rioting returned to the city on the eve of Columbus Day. Trump condemned the protesters as Antifa radicals and Biden fools, urging the FBI to get them and calling on Portland to send the federal troops. Put these animals in jail now, said Trump. The radical left only knows how to take advantage of very dumb leadership fools. This is Biden law and order. Yeah. Biden's the one who's saying, this violence is not going to end unless you vote for me. Almost saying, is like he's threatening to keep this going. He also wouldn't, condemn them, saying they're an idea, not an organization. It's really weird considering a lot of them nowadays are basically just saying organization, and Black Lives Matter, Antifa organization. And they're now starting to group together in certain ways. It's a shame that, the Black Lives Matter, organization just got completely infiltrated by socialists. Just completely at this point. I'm sure they were in there from the get-go, but whoo! Yeah, they took over your entire movement. That's for sure. And it's not to save black people at this point. It's now to gain power for themselves. We got the Day of Rage. Portland militants topple statues of Roosevelt and Lincoln, smash Oregon Historical Society. Portland's indigenous faction of Antifa militants toppled statues of Theodore Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln on Sunday before vandalizing the Oregon Historical Society. The destruction was part of a Day of Rage promoted by the militants, who said that no cameras or live streamers would be allowed. The extremists urged people who attended to wear all black. They don't want them allowed so that way they can't be arrested later on and exposed with their identity, because they have been from journalists. Because a lot of the actual journalists who are willing to go out there and take the photos and try to actually capture the stuff are risking their lives. The big media isn't going to go out there and do that. Oh, hell no. They're done by 6, 7. They're ranting about Trump until late night. Because that's where the money is for them right now. Not talking about this, because at this point I'm sure they just promote it. Except that, they do. Using heavy chains, they pulled the statues down without any interference from city leaders or law enforcement. The leftists celebrated and cheered the destruction. Antifa riders smashed up Oregon Historical Society tonight in downtown Portland, in addition to destroying statues of Lincoln and Roosevelt. From Andy No. Then you got Black Bloc riders cheer and celebrate the mass vandalism destruction in downtown Portland tonight. One of the activists involved, Tracy Lynn Molina, posed for photos with the vandalized and destroyed Roosevelt statue. I don't even know who that is, so okay. Probably someone. Then you got from Andy Knows Twitter here. Riders in Portland did thousands of dollars worth of damage to a small business overnight. In addition to smashing up a museum, police office, and toppling statues, they distributed flyers days ahead of the Day of Rage, but at Portland, police didn't stop them. Basically just allowing them to do this. And, it's the leadership of the local government. It's the mayor. It's the governor. It's all of them at this point over there in Washington. Or in Oregon, sorry. Keep thinking of Seattle, too, because Seattle's not that much better off, to be honest. We got, now on the other side of the country, over in New York, Orthodox Jews rally outside journalists' home in New York City after anti-lockdown leader Heshi Tischler is arrested over assault on the reporter. As city fines 5 synagogues $15,000 for COVID violations. So yeah, Cuomo is going hard after the Orthodox Jewish community because they're actually willing to stand up and protest the anti-lockdown or protest the lockdowns and go against Cuomo. Orthodox Jews rallied outside a journalist's home in New York last night after a Jewish anti-lockdown leader was arrested over an attack on the reporter who claims to have been labeled a Nazi and snitch over his reporting of the COVID-19 crisis in the community. Supporters of Heshi Tischler chanted "No Heshi, no peace" as they gathered outside the home of Jacob Kornblue, a Jewish inside reporter who was allegedly chased, assaulted, and screamed at by a crowd incited by Tischler last week. We had covered that a few days ago. Kornblue has been among Jewish reporters and photographers who have been reporting on the ongoing unrest in the Orthodox community, where many are refusing to adhere to social distancing laws or wear masks. Last Wednesday, he was at a rally when Tischler reported supporters turned on him. Kornblue says they called him a Nazi, Hitler, and Moiser, the Yiddish word for snitch, as they chased and assaulted him. They blame me for reporting that led to the new restrictions imposed by the governor, Kornblue told DailyMail.com on Monday. Well, yeah, I guess that's, I mean, that's kind of the definition of a snitch, isn't it? But, I mean, you can report on what you want, but, I mean, when it then leads to the governor, and then you're basically, when the governor then leads to lockdowns in all these areas because of it, and, yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be pissed at you and probably call you a snitch. He reported the incident to the NYPD, and Tischler was going to hand himself in on Monday morning, but was blindsided with an arrest on Sunday instead. On Sunday night instead. Come on, Daily Mail. He was charged with inciting a riot and remains in custody in central booking. His attorneys on Monday said that his arrest was politically motivated. Our client was arrested. It was a politically motivated arrest. It was completely unjust. Everyone sees in New York City all the rioting and looting and violence, the burning of police vehicles. Here in this case, nobody was hurt. Yeah, they kind of pushed the reporter around a bit, called him a Nazi, snitch, and I guess pushed him away. And I don't even think he really got hurt. But, I mean, they shouldn't have really done that to begin with. And then the other part was just them burning their masks in the street. So that's their level of rioting. They'll call that rioting, but then, all the other stuff is just mostly peaceful protests. But yeah, this is violent rioting, This is of the most insane order. Of just the purest evil rioting. Ooh. Yeah, Lep just kind of goes insane a bit. Just the way they kind of frame it, man. It's just, you make it seem like they're, way, as bad or worse than the rioting that's happening from Black Lives Matter and Antifa, where we have billions of dollars in destruction from them. Well, let's come back over to, California then. California governor forces churches to close, but massive street riots after Lakers win is totally acceptable and police assaulted. Churches are not allowed to hold regular services in California, but massive street riots and celebrations are completely acceptable after the Los Angeles Lakers won the NBA final. The celebrations included fireworks and assaulting police. What COVID? That's pretty much it. I guess they celebrated. They can allow this stuff to happen, but then, people can't go to church. You can't hug your loved ones, but you sure can punch a police officer in the face, I guess. That's basically what they're saying is okay from a lot of these left-leaning states. And I find it just horribly sickening. So we're just going to have this last story here, just a little bit of lighthearted news. We have a caravan makes history attracting 30,000 vehicles in support of Trump. Police in Miami, Florida estimated on Saturday that 30,000 vehicles joined a caravan expressing rejection of communism, socialism, and leftist totalitarian ideologies. An event of historic size and diversity, organizer Orlando Gutierrez Baronat told Breitbart News. Gutierrez Baronat, that's going to be a pain to say every time just because it's long. Not because it's hard to say, it's just long. The co-founder of the Cuban Democratic Directorate, a human rights nonprofit, joined in a coalition of Cuban, Venezuelan, Nicaraguan, Chilean, Uruguayan, I'm going to say that poorly, and other groups to create a patriotic committee responsible for the event. The caravan doubled as both a public display of rejection to left-wing totalitarian blah 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 in a drive-in seminar on the history of communism. Participants turned into Miami's 6:70 a.m. La Poderosa to listen to experts, including the Breitbart News journalists, discuss the destructive history and legacy of communism around the world. So it seems, like a pretty good rally. About 30,000 people against communism, essentially. It's all about they love the American way, and they seem to want to support it. And 30,000 cars, at least, seem to agree. I'm sure there's multiple people within these vehicles. So I'm going to leave it there with, my poor reading skills at the end as my mouth gets really dry as the video goes on. So I will leave it there.